Hi, my name is Erin, and today we will be discussing the Black diaspora within the Afro Haitian community. The Haiti population is well over 10 million, and within that, approximately 95% of the population of Haiti is Black Creole. The first people to settle here were the Taino people, who were also known as the Arawak people. In the late 15th century, the Taino people became a part of the Spanish Empire. Many of the Taino people, amongst other slaves from Western Africa, were colonized by Europeans. Many of these slaves worked at sugar plantations, which made Haiti a very profitable place. The French colony of Haiti was not there to settle, but they were only there for exploitation. They weren't interested in staying on the island, but they wanted enough money to return back to France. You may also be wondering, how did the French Revolution affect Haiti? Well, the Haitian Revolution was a series of wars involving Haitian slaves, colonists, and British and French colonizer troops, and a variety of other parties between 1791 and 1804. The official language that was spoken was French at Haitian Creole, and many of the Haitian population was Roman Catholic, but they also studied and practiced voodoo. Voodooists see the world in a different way. They believe that there is a visible and an invisible world. In a nutshell, the voodooists believe that their ancestors look down upon them and they reach out for specific concerns that will help them throughout their life in the visible world. Voodoo is a religion with African roots. It is supposed to be a mix of African, Catholic, and Native American traditions in the American and the Caribbean. In the 17th and 18th century, a nativistic movement composed mostly of voodoo believers developed in French colonial Haiti. This mass movement helped them achieve political, religious, and cultural freedom from metropolitan France. Due to slaves not having institutional state mechanisms to go against their cruelty of slavery, voodoo became one of their main channels they appropriated to fight the colonial system. This spiritual belief was brought to the United States by enslaved Africans in the early 1700s. This was combined also with Roman Catholicism, which they were required to practice in Louisiana. Once these two had meshed, it formed Louisiana Voodoo. You can find people practicing this religion in Congo Square in New Orleans. During their enslaved days, they practiced voodoo in Congo Square on their off days. In regards to masculinity within Haiti, you had to be considered what they called a big man. Haitian state and cultural politics has been dominated by ritual practices by these people who were called big men. To be a big man in Haiti, in its diaspora of the powerful men, you had to be respectable and have social statures and all of the above to have authority. The French Revolution continued on towards the Haitian Revolution. With that being said, the slaves from the Haitian Revolution rose up against European colonial rule. On January 1st, 1804, the entire island was declared independent in the name of Haiti. With that being said, France still continued to maintain its presence in the western part of the island up until 1809. But for the United States, with the United States having slave-owning states, they feared the spread of the slave revolt. So with that being said, all they could do was suppress the news of the rebellion. The Haitian mass migration to the more developing countries, especially the United States. Less than 2,000 Haitians legally migrated to the United States from 1900s to 1950. Changes in the United States immigration law and citizen rights law in 1916 was to benefit the first wave of Haitians in mass migration. The second wave of Haitian migrations to the United States in 1980 was a lot more heavier. By 1995, the United States Migration Act called for significant requirements for the family's reunification, thus led the legal migration more difficult for Haitians. Since 1990, 15,000 Haitians continue to arrive legally, and about 200,000 Haitians who had been living unconsciously under the U.S. without proper documents had been permitted to work. After the migration, members of the Haitian diaspora in the United States and Canada had better off economically and a higher level of education than those who resided back in the Caribbean islands. Many family and friends of Haitian background remain loyal to their heritage. This means that the Haitian diaspora members throughout the U.S. catered to those Haitian clients in their restaurants, clubs, clinics, and stores. A lot of the Haitian markets were formal and informal micro enterprises and almost solely Haitian based. With that being said, these businesses tend to have little growth and created only significant wealth and catered to a limited amount of markets of a few people that were employed. The U.S. Haitian diaspora of Haiti lies within the capital. They neglected a relative Haiti economic development requirements. Between 1990 and 2010, Haitians in the United States became much more of a higher education system and contributed to the Haitians' development. The Haitians were more highly paid after this and becoming business managers, lawyers, and scientists who then eventually gave back to their homeland.